What's up, guys? Happy Wednesday. So thankful for you. If you're a listener, subscriber, again, it's free to subscribe. I just want to thank you for all your support. It really means a lot. I love seeing the reviews in Apple Podcasts, almost said iTunes. So really love that. Before we get into talking with Sam, I wanted to just let you guys know about our free workshop coming up next Tuesday night, 7 p.m. EST, in our Facebook group, TOGFB, with Maddie May of Adventure Instead. She has just really changed the elopement game. I feel like she has helped the industry. You know, anybody who's wanted to migrate from doing big traditional weddings, you know, churches, halls, dance floors, hotels, golf clubs, etc. Not golf clubs, country clubs, to where she, you know, where you can have smaller intimate weddings and have them still be really cool, or adventure weddings, or pioneer sessions, if you've heard of Robert J. Hill. You know, getting out of the box, which I feel like right now, this year has really been a year for everybody to kind of step out of the box and do something different, including couples, photographers, etc. So really, really, really cool. Would encourage you to come. It is free, and you get access to all of the past workshops as well. So TOGFB.com. We'll see you next Tuesday, 7 p.m. EST. Now for today's guest, Sam Hurd, one of my favorite guys. He was my wedding photographer. He's been on the podcast before. But since his original appearance, his Patreon has really exploded and really set the standard for photographers, you know, Patreon educational content. There's nobody I know who puts out the quantity and quality of work that he does on Patreon, and it's just really, really cool. I even love kind of watching, as somebody who I feel like my business is growing in maturity, watching newer photographers learn directly from Sam, which I think is really, really cool, really valuable to have somebody who is just a really, really good teacher. He's taught tons of workshops, and then now, you know, obviously with COVID, Patreon is even more emphasized. So, we left a little bit of our pre-show in the podcast just because we were just talking kind of how everybody's feeling right now, and I feel like it's really, really valuable. So without any further ado, here's Sam Hurd.
I'm okay. Everything's okay.
Yeah.
It's, you know, a moving target.
Yeah.
So many, it's really tough. I'm trying to like keep my head down and really think through blanket policies that will apply to everyone.
Yeah.
And the temptation is to take it on a case-by-case basis because every wedding has a different circumstance, you know, family traveling from out of town, family being local, locational stuff. Some venues are open, some are not. You know, in this area, we're dealing with 3 different jurisdictions in terms of states, and or, you know, DC is not a state, but basically. So, you know, I'm just trying to really think through like what is the best policy for everyone so that it's fair and nobody feels hurt. And I'm glad to have like the guidelines, the guidance of the federal government, you know, think of whatever you want in terms of how all that is being managed. I do like the phased guidance of how things can reopen because it at least points to a place that I can say, hey, you know, if your venue and your wedding date is within a phase 3 or within, you know, 60 days of a phase 3 situation, then any changes is preferential from you. And I'm going to treat it like that. And if you want to reschedule, that's fine. But, you know, it's not going to be a free, super flexible, you know, it's more, and that's the thing. Like, where do you draw that? For me, that's the line that's drawn in terms of what is a client preference versus what is them, you know, this something being a necessity, like the venue's closed or our family can't travel or whatever. So but it's crazy. I mean, and then you have the international aspect of all this. I've got an Indian wedding in August that they had to reschedule to next year because like half their guests were coming from India, their extended family. And, you know. Anyway, so how are you doing? I'm okay. In other words, like, you know, in terms of finances, and I just booked a wedding 2 days ago for next year. So weddings for 2021 are trickling in, which is nice. I do hope and feel like it would make sense that people would get a head start on that.
Yeah, totally.
Because they have nothing else to do, and they don't want their dates to get booked up if they hear about other people postponing 2020 weddings. So I'm hoping that we'll have a rush past a certain point. A little disappointed I haven't seen more of that. I would think people are stuck at home with nothing but at the same time, I would imagine a lot of people don't have the right attitude and emotional state to like I'm going to get engaged.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%.
During the
yeah, it's going to be a little bit funky. Yeah. We've had similar, like this week we booked, and I don't know where you're at, but for me, it's very uncommon, at least at this stage of my business with pricing the way it is, market, all that stuff to like, it's very rare for me to book like 4 weddings in 1 week. It's usually like 1 or 2. I've talked to people all the time and they're like, oh yeah, I book every week. And I'm like, oh, I that's just not my consistency. I eventually get 30 to 35, but it's never this consistent thing. Whereas this week we booked 4 and it was very exciting, but I feel like
now were those 2021?
Almost all of them were 2021. Yeah. There's like a New Year's Eve one, but yeah, basically 2021. And I feel like there's 2 crowds, and there's the crowd that does want to get a jump on it, which I'm thankful for. And they're like, oh yeah, we want to get our dates. We want to get our favorite vendors. We're very specific, all that stuff. And then the other crowd, I've gotten, had a phone call with a couple and then gotten to I think even Nathan mentioned it yesterday, where like, you get to this point with the couple and you're like, hey, here's a contract, here's next steps, everything. I've even adjusted like the first payment to make it a smaller, bite to chew on. And they're like, hey, we don't know what's happening. We're going to wait. And I'm like, oh, so like we got to this point where we said we're going to get married together, and you said no, we're going to wait.
Yeah.
So we have a little bit about, because people don't buy with fear, which is hard, and like you said, the feelings too of like, are people really pumped to spend money and do engagements in a luxury industry? I don't know.
Yeah, it's interesting. It is also an interesting concept, the wedding industry as a luxury industry. Yeah, because it is thought to be so insulated from kind of economic swings. During the recession was basically when I started my wedding, or my business, and it was a great time to start. And where we are, everything's so insulated in terms of the federal government having such a footprint. People's incomes, I don't think, are quite as affected as much as somewhere like New York, for example. But I don't know. I've never really thought of photography as a true like luxury service. I do think it's a bit more of a practical service at the end of the day. Everything else that can go into a wedding, I could see being defined as luxury. But I've never thought of the photography as that, which is one reason why I think people put so much value and effort into it. Many people, not everyone.
Totally.
But they appreciate the long-term appreciated value of
what we create.
The pricelessness that goes into it. Yeah. But that's easy for me to say because I'm obsessed with wedding photography. Of course I'm going to say
no,
that.
Totally.
I don't know what the general client sentiment is.
I would like to think I'm going to leave all this in. I think this is great. No. Okay. But no, it's 100%. I think the industry in of itself is like, based around this like, not luxury, but like whatever the technical term is for like keeping up with the Joneses, at least for the average of, most couples. We're like, we want to plan this thing that we might never do again. We might not ever have people serve us steak, we might have to cook it ourselves, right? Or whatever, or that kind of thing. And so you have this like luxurious day, or I'm going to buy outfits that I only wear once or whatever. But the photography wise, it's almost like we're in a luxury industry, but like ours is not. I agree. I don't think that's a hard pill to swallow by any means. But
yeah. But it's going to be fascinating. I actually have an elopement later today.
Oh wow!
So it's the couple, me and their officiant. And I had one last Saturday as well. Both were wedding clients that were planning to have full weddings and, just want to continue to get married on the day. Yeah. And then postpone the quote party to next year, which I think is a great approach. I think that's lovely. And both have been totally like upfront and accommodating to like, feel free to keep your distance, wear a mask, whatever you want to do to feel comfortable as a photographer. We really want you there. We really want you to document this because obviously the value of the photos, having no other friends and family there is just like, how do you even measure that? Like
totally.
They need, and I want to provide that. It's not an essential service, but we're taking as many precautions as possible and being mindful and do what you can. I've been home for a month and a week, so I'm not trying to just I'm comfortable with it.
Totally. No, I'm in that same space. We have an elopement on Sunday, and it's just 2 friends of mine that I trust them. They've been quarantined just as long as we have, so we've either had it or are safe. In theory, and other than riding in the car with each other, I think, is the one risk in my mind that is happening. Like, we're just gonna be a portrait session where we don't hug afterwards. Like I'll wear a mask.
That was the weirdest part, to come into the elopement I did on last Saturday, and like just hug from a distance.
Yeah.
Like she's getting ready and doing makeup. Her sister's doing her makeup, and I'm just like, yeah, okay. It's weird to not have any type of affection at all. It's strange.
Yeah, no, totally. So, dude, I want to talk to you. We, officially, you were on this little tiny podcast, and it's still tiny, but this little tiny podcast 3 years ago, and it was wonderful. And we've known each other for a while. You shot my wedding. We have a lot in common, and I looked it up today. I became a member of your Patreon on May 4th, Star Wars reference, 2017.
Wow.
Like a long...
Was that like the launch month, probably?
Yeah.
It was definitely in May.
It was literally
cool.
that, and then the next post you had was like, hey, we reached the 135 review goal or whatever. And I was like, oh, cool, awesome. And it's been awesome to be a member of that. And I think I feel like you've pioneered kind of this space of... I think the cool part, and you used to do workshops, and you still do workshops from time to time, I feel like, and you speak at conferences and stuff like that.
How thankful, how grateful am I that that's not a huge part of my business anymore.
Right.
Gosh, because it used to be that March and April were, I would call them March Madness for my workshops. That would be like the bulk of, I would do like 2 workshops a week for a month and a half straight. It's like, oh my gosh, if I had to deal with that now, I know some photographers that did that this year had to deal with those kinds of postponements and cancellations of their workshops. So again, I feel nothing but grateful. As hard as it might get for me, it's always worse for somebody else.
100%. Yeah.
Keep that mindset.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially for us. It's, but that I've seen the Patreon for you just kind of set the standard for so many other photographers, including myself. And, you're a guy who I think has, 1,200 patrons now, or like 1,195, on a good day. And I've got 2, and then Nessa's got, 100 to 200 or so, and Benj, Aisha's starting, and you probably
finally, I told Benj before I was like, dude, he and I had a long discussion at a conference about maybe we should hire. We each had our own workshops, and he was really going for I'm going to probably just pay a couple grand to have a friend videotape me at a workshop and then sell it. And I've always had, whether it be presets, workshops, videos, I've always had an aversion to the flash in the pan, here's a distinct product that you push and push and push and sell, and it's, the curve looks like this. I know that doesn't help on a podcast, but it's basically just a mountain peak, and then it crashes down, and you have to create again another product, and who knows what one of the things I love, and we don't have to talk about Patreon the whole time, because believe me, I could talk all day about Patreon.
No, I want to. Let's go.
But I'm thinking about making a how to do a Patreon workshop. But honestly, it has changed my life, because it's sustainable, right? It's this ongoing, and it's got a measurable pressure of accountability, a measurable aspect of accountability is kind of what I think of it, where people come and go, and you've probably seen, and I would be curious to get your perspective on your feeling of not consistency. Well, maybe consistency. I don't really care much about consistency, but the volume of stuff that it gets put out. The first 6 months, it was almost like a daily thing. Any little piece of whatever I thought was fascinating, I would put on Patreon. And then I realized that, a lot of people are falling behind, and they were getting so behind in posts that they would some would catch up, but others would be like, I'm not keeping up with it, I'm going to leave. So I started to prioritize higher, fewer numbers, but higher density per post, of content within it. And then I started to prioritize video, but what's maintained and been consistent as a metric for me to follow is people actively leaving versus people actively coming. Nobody on your website, yes, in a general sense maybe, but nobody on your website or social media is actively stopping following you. Again, you're going to get people that are like, oh, I hate that guy's opinion on this, I'm going to unfollow him. But rarely is that the case. Once they follow you, they keep up, and they're there if the algorithm surfaces you, whatever. You don't get that backward reverse pressure and momentum, but because it's all money based, Patreon, you do. And when you get that one day of 5 people leaving after a week and a half of 20 people arriving, it whips you into shape. For me, that's a huge motivator. I could see very many photographers feeling kind of discouraged by that system, but for me, it's worked very, very well. And again, now I have this measure of like, oh, I have a huge list of so much stuff that I want to get out, but I can't do it all in 1 month because that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like you have to also measure the value of what people are paying versus the content and all that. But I love having some kind of outside force that's giving me guidance on just how much I need to put out and then the quality of it. If I start putting out crap, again, that's going to be reflected in the numbers, and
totally.
it kind of hold you accountable. I love it.
Yeah.
Love it.
Well, it's been awesome to see, man. It's been awesome to be a part and just kind of see it grow. And I love the content, and I feel like it's also too, I was talking to Nessa about this, but the cool thing about Patreon and subscribing to a few other people is, you, in our cases, I'm a full-time photographer doing okay. And, I've been to one of your actual physical workshops pre-coronavirus back in the day. And, for you'll share something that I'll be like, oh, okay, yeah, that's kind of what I do or whatever. Cause I feel like you and I run very similar, for the rest of our industry, very similar businesses. And then, but then you'll post something, I'm like, this is kind of nerdy, Sam, and has nothing to do with photography, but I'm into it. But I think that's also the personal thing. We're two guys talking on the very same mic, going through very similar interfaces. And, and that's where I just like it as like, oh yeah, like Sam is my, if I'm a level 7 in tech lovingness, Sam is level 8. And so it's a little bit closer to have access in that kind of, environment versus like, like we both love like Marco Arment and the ATP guys. Like I would never want to watch them code because I'd be like, I have no idea what's happening. Right. Like there's a little bit of that too. And I love seeing that. And I love kind of one of your posts too was like the, doing the Instagram filters for stories where you're like, hey, this might not be a practical photography thing, but this is a business thing. And it's a little bit nerdy, and I'm nerdy enough to know how to do it, like you are, with a degree in computer science. And and then you go and walk through it and say, guys, like, this is one of those things that could be very rewarding. It also is just cool. It's awesome when you post a story and you're like, hey, the filter is mine. It's not, the Bahamas one or whatever. Yeah. And I just love that. I think that's been the coolest thing. And then, your state of the industry reports, of course, which is really cool. And I think like,
give me some feedback on. So I've been working on it, but all the data I collected was pre-coronavirus. Yeah. So I've been just sitting on it like, I don't know what to do anymore. I'm going to put out the report and all the graphs and beautiful data and stuff. And then I actually have a fellow patron who reached out who does data kind of analysis professionally. And he set up like a cool Excel spreadsheet that's, if you want to get nerdy, I'm going to put it together a tutorial about how to read stuff and draw your own conclusions. Because for everybody's going to have a different sort of pull, a different thread that they're interested in investigating that there's no way I could account for it all. Yeah. So, but here it is. All the data is pre-coronavirus. So I'm like, it doesn't matter anymore. Nobody cares. It's pre-corona. Yeah. I do think it's going to be super, super valuable to do one the end of this year. For 2021 and then be able to compare the data. Yeah. But the actual report being released now, I was planning to do it in April, but the more this corona quarantine drags on and people are just stressed about, everything related to their business personally, the less I want to be like, well, here's what it looked like the beginning of the year. Yeah. It's like, it's just not relevant.
Right. Well, when that data is based, in theory, and for people who don't know, Sam basically does this, what I feel like is a very comprehensive state of the industry report where both the patrons that he has on his Patreon are about 1,000, 1,200, but then also any of the audience for photographers, fill it out and, just different questions. Hey, what's your average pricing? What's your booking going on? How are you running? Basically, I feel like getting a state of the industry through getting the data about the health of other photographers' businesses or how they run it, I think, essentially.
Yep. And how optimistic they are about, their business now and in the future. And there is a distinct, so this is my second year doing it. The first year was patrons only in terms of who could submit the data. This year, and that was mostly because it was just a trial run. I just had the idea and I had no freaking clue what it would look like. This year, though, it was about, I got 11 or 1,200 people responding. Yeah. And half of them were, maybe even fewer than half were actual patrons of mine. And the other were just the wider photography community, just so people know it's not just my patrons that are making up the data.
Yeah, I knew it at first it was like definitely in the lab and then reached out to the public. But, I think it's cool because, there's other organizations like a Honeybook kind of size thing, but it's just going to feel different than a photographer doing it and say, hey, we're going to run this. And And so
that's the key. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I've seen, Wedding Wire or The Knot kind of do sort of similar things. Fearless Photographers, I think, had one just about pricing. And it's whenever you've got like the muscle of an entire organization that has very different motivating influences than a photographer just like trying to rally together a bunch of photographers to like get this thing made. That's, I think, why I am so bullish on this existing as a concept.
Yeah.
So I cut you off there. Please.
No, it's okay. No, I like it. But I think it's, you were, trying to just get data and then present that data each year in theory. And then, in theory, it also, shows some trends, shows some guidelines, et cetera. But then, coronavirus just bucked it. And you're like, oh, this is literally breaking the trend. If we released, different data, or even if you ran the numbers now and got, new entries, all that stuff would look different, in theory. And, hopefully 10 years from now, if you're still doing this stuff, then we would see like, oh yeah, that was the coronavirus, that was 2020, the greatest year of our lives.
Gosh, the data I got from the current state of the industry, the 2019 year, basically, I opened up submissions December through January. So, that the turnover from 2019 to 2020, I think that will be now incredibly valuable insight into exactly how the coronavirus is affecting our industry specifically. So again, I'm super grateful that the timing worked out for me to have that. I just don't know what to do with this specific report because it just doesn't seem relevant. But it's something I'm excited about. I'm not a data person. I have no idea what I'm doing. I've recruited a couple of other patrons that do data kind of stuff more in their professional backgrounds. Totally. And so they're helping a bit, but at the end of the day, it seems like you kind of just need to figure out any conclusions that you want to draw. So it's fun. It's a cool project. I'm glad that you're excited about it. I'm just, anybody out there that has opinions listening, feel free to reach out to me about exactly what, if it's even worth, would you want to see data like that about what the 2019, I don't know. It's tough.
Yeah, I mean, it can be hard because I feel like, if there are photographers that, see your, presenting it or advertising like, hey, I'm looking for input. I think also, too, some photographers, their first instinct, if they don't know you, is why would I give this guy all my data? Or, not my, like in the Apple form, but like, oh, I'm going to tell this guy my pricing or whatever. I'm going to, and I think that's a little bit, weird, but at the same time, too, at least for me, I feel like you've earned my trust in that regard, and hopefully other patrons' trust too, where you're just like, oh, this is not to single anybody out. And if there is any tangible benefit you get as a business owner locally, then great. But I think as a educator, quote unquote educator, then like then you're trying to get data for that, and I think that's idealistically.
And I'm not attaching any. I could, Sam Hurd, like jump in and see if you chose to give me your email address, I could see and tie your responses to your email, but that's not what this is about. It's the data as presented is completely anonymized. I just am capturing emails, again, optionally, so that anybody who did submit and gave me their email, I can message directly the report, and the report's going to be publicly available. Yeah. Like I'm making it completely open. I might do like an early release to patrons because at the end of the day, this takes time and a lot of thought and energy and effort, and so I want some value and some benefit to patrons, but the final report is going to be totally public and open to all and directly emailed to everybody that did submit their data. So it's like a win-win. But you're right. Part of it is gaining trust, and that's why I do want to make it an annual thing where it slowly, hopefully, builds in awareness and can reach other kind of bubbles and clusters in the wedding market, like Honeybook and Rise and all that. I have no presence or even awareness of what those groups are like. Yeah. But I know it's a very different type of like market and a very different collection of photographers. And totally, I actually had some exposure to that with a local DC group. I'm horrible at networking with my local photographers, like Beyond You and like a few other people. Yeah. But I was in a Zoom call with like maybe 30 other mostly women, DC area wedding photographers. And I don't know why I got invited. Somebody just knew me, I guess, and was like, hey, you should jump in. We're just doing a Zoom call to just do like a status check on how everybody's doing. And I jumped in there and I was talking about my PickTime app and all this stuff. And then I got out of that and I realized I probably sounded like such an asshole. Nobody cares. Nobody knows who I am here. Yeah. And I'm just like, oh, make sure you download the PickTime app. And like, I probably sounded like such a... So like, I need to remember myself that it's a slow build in terms of gaining trust interest and awareness for new ideas like that.
Totally.
Like the state of the industry or pick time apps or whatever I'm working on. So.
Yeah, I think that's a good example of what I want to ask you more about. Just Patreon in general is like in theory, you have people that you've earned their trust a little bit, and thus you can communicate in a way that is to that specific audience. Whereas like I feel like you, myself, and we probably know other photographers similar to us, we're like in a group setting where we don't have that trust. We're just other photographers. We can come off pretty poorly if we don't aren't accountable to it. But it's never our intention. We're excited about something, or hey, this is the data that I found or whatever. But I want to know. Tell me 3 years ago, 4 years ago, what, if any, tips did you give Benj? Or what is something you talked about, kind of spreading out the content for Patreon, like?
Yeah, first of all, I'm still trying tons of stuff. I've seen some photographers have great success having a totally opposite approach than me, and other photographers fall completely flat. The biggest thing I hear for people that want to start one is, I have enough content for maybe a year if I try really hard, but I only have enough content for like 2 months. Yeah. And I don't want to have this like monthly obligation that I then have to keep up with. And so what people don't realize is that's all you need. You just need a starting point, because once you get 1 or 2 people investing in you, hopefully, if you get just 0 people for the entirety of your thing, then you got more to do and just building your business
totally
in other arenas. But once you get 1 or 2 people and hopefully get feedback from them, it kind of starts to create a loop, a cycle of that feedback plays into questions or areas that actually warrant an entire additional post that then you get feedback from. And so the content, in other words, even if you did have an amazing year's worth of content preset and ready to go, it wouldn't even matter, because like a couple weeks into it, you'll start to realize that the motivation and inspiration, I should say, for new stuff is coming from the old stuff.
Right.
If you're paying attention, if you're opening up that communication, I would highly recommend not just posting crap and never engaging with your patrons. That sounds like a horrible idea to me.
Right, totally.
It might work for some kind of creators in terms of maybe podcast type people or YouTubers. Like maybe nobody would expect you to like engage in the comments or whatever. But if you're putting out educational content, you got to have that give and take, because your audience will start to give back to you more than you are giving to them. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean, in terms of like content ideas. So that's one thing. The other would be, not being afraid to modify and play around with the financial expectations that you set up. As long as you've communicated to your audience about anything you're thinking about changing or playing around with. I used to have one blanket tier that accessed everything. Then I realized like, I can actually limit my tier. So I'm going to reward the people that stick around and the people that come first. Yeah. So I created, it's a completely arbitrary limit that I just decided like, boom, the first 1,000 people are going to be locked into this tier unless they leave. That's fine too. But that way they have access to that better deal versus a new tier that I made for $15 that is exact same access to stuff. But, it's if you weren't there early or if you haven't stuck around, you lose that opportunity.
Totally.
And so that's just playing around with the business strategies behind it all. And there's probably there are better ways to do that. But Patreon doesn't... they don't cater just to educators. They don't cater just to photographers. Right. They more so cater to YouTubers or people that have audiences that they always give away stuff freely, and they just try and monetize on the support and the goodwill on the back end. So Patreon doesn't do a lot to like set you up with exactly what's going to work well, in your niche. You have to figure it out on your own. And so that's been sort of the evolution for myself in all of this. And it's exciting to see, a meaningful uptick in people trying to adopt it. Again, 3-4 years ago, I got a ton of pushback and just straight up like criticism and hate from people saying like, this is bullshit. Why would I subscribe to hear about your review of this camera bag when there are 10 YouTubers, here are the links, like go look at this for free, guys. And it's like, okay, that's fine. But this is mine. This is my opinion.
Yeah, exactly.
and that has value for people that like my voice in the world or my approach and my visual aesthetic. It all kind of plays back to that. So the end of the day, you have to value yourself. There's always the temptation to cast the wider net with free content and get those. You're always going to get more eyeballs with free content.
Yeah.
So the temptation's always there to push that, but you don't have to. I've always been obsessed with the slow burn, the slow build of stuff, and for the sake of sustainability and just continuing to exist and do what I do, because especially in weddings, it is so tied to sort of your physical capabilities and your age. Honestly, past a certain point, you're just an old dude who has a bad back.
Yeah, exactly. Or
That's
bad knees or something. Yeah.
Yeah, bad knees. Like there is an earlier threat of having to bow out of like what you do with your feet on the ground, boots on the ground as a wedding photographer. No matter how much you love it, the market forces will just push you out.
Totally.
I think I can't imagine that not being the case. So, and well, way earlier than a typical age of 65. So you have to, got to stay creative,
figure something out.
These sources of revenue. Yeah,
dude. So I have a lot more Patreon questions, but there's somebody that we know, I won't say on the podcast, but they don't think that there is a time limit for wedding photographers. And I think for you and I, like, we're in it right now, so it's hard to know what the end is. But like you said, like, we both agree that there is a physical thing. Or I even heard, one of my hero photographers who said, I've just realized that some of my jokes have stopped landing because my clients don't get it anymore. He's like aged out his jokes essentially. And so, yeah, what do you think that is? Like, because this other photographer, we had a very nice discussion, and I disagree. I'm like, I think idealistically, I'd like to shoot till I'm 45 at this pace, at that 30 to 40 wedding, a year pace. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. Well, first, that's one reason why I personally don't source or curate any like go-to list of jokes. I try and make which also gets me in hot water, because sometimes I'm like, gosh, I don't know how to make these guys laugh. I don't have a fallback plan. If they're not funny, then they don't look funny. No, I can always make people giggle, but it's true. Like, there is a danger in getting too set in your ways in terms of how you operate and what your what's the word? Not strategy. Well, I guess strategy, but how you do your thing. Like, you have to be constantly evolving, because that makes complete sense to me. Yeah, if you're joking about a movie that came out in the 90s and it's 2020, you're gonna it's not gonna work. But dude, I don't know. I see many times videographers that are much older. Yeah. They could be my dad, and the same clients that hired them. I assume they're also paying them well, and they're trucking along, and it's fine. So maybe there is a way for it to go on. But even if that's the case, I don't want to accept that and believe it, because that starts to take the pressure and the fire out of my belly. Totally. To keep iterating and keep pushing myself. Yeah. I've always been petrified of getting too settled and comfortable with where I'm at, because once you reach that peak, there's nowhere to go but down. I want to always be growing and always be rising. And yeah, it's really compelling if you have a exponential growth forever, but that's not going to happen, right? I'm more interested in just the slow curve. Yeah. And then hopefully, just the slight plateau, and then I die because I'm 70.
Right. You dip out, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. Not the, what I see so many photographers do in just the span of like 3 to 5 years is this curve, like this mountain curve again, like you would experience selling like a distinct product, like presets or something. Like, you get this huge burst of sales and then boom, it's gone. That's not what I want in my career. I want something more stretched out and, flatten that curve.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, you don't want I think you alluded this to me before, but you don't want, there's something about, you said, like, flash in the pan or just the launch, quote unquote, structure of gaining income. Because, it's like, okay, you launch once this thing and you get this big spike in, adoption, whatever, purchases, whatever. And that is great. Like, I don't dislike somebody trying to do that, but I think then you get addicted to it, or you say, oh yeah, everything has to happen for these launches to be bigger and bigger and bigger. And I just don't know if those...
That's true. And for some people, I could see them making the argument that, that once your sales are in the drain or back to zero, like that, then you push yourself to make another one. But I actually think that that's not sustainable in terms of concepts. There's only so many ideas. There's only so many different ways of teaching, different methods and all of this. I don't think any person that I know, whose work I also respect and enjoy, would be able to do that, like, every single year.
Yeah.
A completely new, distinct set of presets or not in any way that it's meaningful.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a shade of difference, but like not in a way that I'd be willing to pay that $300 for that workshop every single year or So that's the thing. It's what's magical about Patreon. It's this slow drip of information.
Yeah.
Even if some of it is sort of similar to a concept I've talked about before on my own Patreon or whatever, there's like this 10 or 15% newness to the approach to the idea.
Yeah.
That if you take that as the purchaser, the supporter on Patreon, you get this, I think, even more benefit than attending a full in-person one-day workshop. You get the ability to distill the information with a clear mind instead of having data overload from like 8 hours straight of a lecture. If you stretch that out over a year or two, like you actually now have a tangible, different way of approaching the world. I don't even know how we got on this topic.
I love it. That's my ability to take it anywhere. No, just kidding. What is one thing, in Patreon that you've seen over the last, 3.5 years that, you didn't think would work and has worked? Like a way of your posting or technique, or, I know you've gotten a lot into video, or now, I'm addicted to just all your shirts. So I know people are like, the inside crowd is just like looking and like, what is going on? And then what is something that you thought would work and maybe didn't,
Yeah. So what has worked? Well, I will say I've had great fun with IGTV. I'm fairly bullish on it.
Yeah.
I'm completely, potential wedding date change. This is live occurring now on my Apple Watch. Moving their date to October 2nd. Oh, 2021. Woo. Okay, cool. I was like, I'm pretty sure I'm booked all of this fall. Okay, 2021. Okay, that's good. Woo. That's good. Sorry. Okay, a little real time.
I love it.
Freak out for Sam.
It happens to all of us, everybody.
So what I've been doing, which I've been surprised and happy with, is opening up now. I've got this back catalog of 300 plus posts over 3-something years of basically complete private Patreon exclusive only stuff. So I'm opening up some of that older content to be more freely accessible, even if it's small windows of time or just indefinitely, like some of those high value posts that, are old, but still relevant, promoting them. And I'm very bullish on IGTV as a place to do that. I know for years now, the hot spot has been YouTube.
Yeah.
But I think Facebook desperately wants to be capitalizing and capture some of what YouTube is doing, and they haven't done it. I think IGTV makes a lot of sense for me and where I like to be as a photographer on Instagram.
Yeah.
And the view counts, I see direct correlation in the numbers of people watching my videos organically versus how many of them turn into actual patrons at the end of the day. So that has worked surprisingly well. And 2020, for me mentally, was sort of like a clean perspective on things. I just got really motivated to like hunker down on actual strategy versus just like throwing a bunch of crap at a wall and trying to remember what's stuck. IGTV has worked well. Specifically on Patreon, everyone loves gear reviews, so I need to get better about those. The problem is there's very few things that I legitimately add to my workhorse sort of arsenal of stuff.
Yeah.
I could review everything but I hate reviewing crap that I end up not using because it's just like, okay, here's many, many hours written on a review for something, and my recommendation is to not buy it. Yeah. It's like nobody wants to hear that. That's not fun for me. It sucks. But I know reviews are very high value. People love those always. I'm always surprised at how much engagement those get. When it's like, this is just my opinion on a lens. Like, really?
Yeah.
30 people liked this? Normally I would get 2 likes.
Yeah.
Anyway. Yeah. So that's one thing. What hasn't worked? Giving away stuff for free.
Really?
No matter how much I try to like reinvest the revenue I get from not in terms of sustainable, like good, high quality, like people that support.
Even the camera giveaway stuff?
Nah, it's a flash in the pan. I've given away maybe 4 or 5 cameras over the whole years. And I've loved more the secret giveaways where it's not publicized. And I've just like gifted somebody a camera and they're just like, I don't know what to do with this. This is amazing. Thank you. And but it's not like them that's not, I love that just for my own selfish good vibes.
Sure.
To like give someone a camera and then feel good about it, which I consider to be pretty selfish at the end of the day. No, people don't want free crap. Again, it's definitely that peak curve of like flash in the pan. You get a bunch of eyeballs and then people are on to the rest of their lives. I found it not to be very effective.
Yeah.
So if you give away something every single month, maybe it could be if you were able to do that. I don't want to just be running a giveaway thing, a pyramid scheme of using some money to, like at the end of the day, it sort of starts to look like that. But at the end of the day, the 3-step click and other stuff that has come about, I don't know if you've ever talked about that on the podcast before, but other stuff that has been inspired by the constraint and the box that Patreon puts you in with like this safe, exclusive, private place that isn't publicly accessible.
Yeah.
That's one thing that got me thinking about the 3-step click, this contest, this photo contest that isn't, just pay me a bunch of money to submit and I pick winners arbitrarily or whatever. It's like it's a group voted thing. That stuff has worked really well in terms of just getting people excited, but the actual giveaway aspect of it, no, I'm really surprised about that.
Yeah, that's super interesting. No, I think it's because in theory, it, like you said, it does like open up the top of your funnel. There are new eyes, but yeah, it's almost hard to quantify. Okay, yeah, I got 100 new members. We'll say arbitrarily this month, and they stay until the contest is over. And I imagine you could draw it out. You're like, hey, this is a 3-month contest, but then that feels icky as well. Stay actively subscribed for 4 months and you could win. Yeah, exactly. Like you go into this magical bucket, but at the same time, also too, I mean, I think you can attest to this. And even for me, I feel like your Patreon and most Patreons that I go to, the people that are there, it is like a different community, even a little bit more mature or maybe more just nice or more benefit of the doubt than even like our Facebook group, stuff like that. And people, the crowd that is addicted to the free stuff is not the Patreon crowd, and maybe it's not the audience, and they're not the kinds of consumers at that time, maybe because they could change, they could be different. They're not the kinds of consumers that are going to be sustainable, good Patreons, that are like, again, you always ask for feedback, which I think is really cool. You're always into comments, which I think that is part of the fun, is that it's like an active going conversation. And there are people that don't want to converse. There are people that just want free stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. And I want to help. I love the idea of, using this audience to do something that I otherwise couldn't, in terms of giving somebody like a really nice, expensive camera and then seeing that person grow into a professional photographer potentially.
Totally.
Like, that's awesome. I love that. But the framing of it and how you do it, I still haven't cracked that code and haven't really seen it work well. So I need to come up with some other approach to that. Maybe, I don't know, maybe just a dedicated like fund that I pay into every month that people can track or something. I don't know. The other part is just spreading yourself too thin with content. I've been guilty of that with just like, I have so many ideas, literally books full of stuff that there's always something. The newest idea is the one I'm most excited about. Yeah. So I fixate on that. And then that by necessity, like 3 other ideas get bumped and then I just never get around to doing them.
Yeah.
So you got to be careful, because I have been guilty of like, I'm going to make a post about this in the next week. And then it just never happens because I get distracted about making another post about something that came up. And that's always kind of tricky. And I hate people feeling disappointed, especially if I've set up an expectation that like it's coming. That's happened a lot with gear reviews where I thought I was going to use the thing. I had those, what's the thing where you have kind of rose colored, or, you get something new and you think it's changing your life. And then
sure.
A week later you realize like, actually this isn't useful at all.
Yeah.
What the heck is that? That's a phenomenon.
I know. I forget what it's called.
Effect. Yeah. That happens to me all the time, but that's part of the reason I try and stress on Patreon. It's like, hey, if a review is coming and and I have positive things to say about it, it's not as exciting as when it launched and you want the feedback because you want to get it quickly. Like, no, but it's actually making a difference in my workflow, and I found it to be beneficial versus that first week where you're going to find good things to say about almost everything.
Right. No,
it's got to be a really bad product for you to hate it. If it's, on paper, if it looks really good, you're going to believe it for the first couple weeks probably.
Well,
many products I can point to that where it's like, oh my god, this is amazing, and then you suddenly realize actually this takes me 10 times as long to do what I was doing before. Nope.
100%. Yeah, it's so hard, especially that's the one thing that I felt like, as now I've been full-time for about 5.5 years, and I feel really pumped, and there are systems that I have and I don't mind changing them, but I feel like over time, to introduce something or adjust something, it has to win your mind over. And you have to say, okay, yeah, I think this is good enough to put into my workflow or whatever. Or even for you and I, like we change cameras like people change outfits, but it's like we're pursuing this. At least for me, I always say I'm camera agnostic. Like I'm pursuing the best camera for the job that makes me feel like I'm doing the best job, and that's my basic premise. And it's
Did you try the EOS R yourself?
Yeah, I did. I did in July last year. That was on my mirrorless journey. So I knew I wanted to switch to mirrorless, but I wasn't sure which. So I had an EOS R, and it was wonderful, and it was absolutely great. I think honestly, and like this is one of your good controversial Patreon posts, is that I couldn't get past the one card thing, and that was just for me. I couldn't sleep at night. That was my one thing, and I was like, at the time, I think if it just had two, I was like, okay, yeah, I'd buy 3 of these and be ready to go. And I think that was just my issue, and
I can respect that. Yeah, I totally understand. Gosh, yeah, if you're losing sleep at night, certainly.
I just love. I mean, you and I both are very into. We both have huge RAIDs, and we like to back up everything. I don't know about you, but like I've kept every bad raw, and it's that it's almost up to 1 million photos now, and I don't want to lose any of them.
No, I don't either. Yeah,
even the bad ones.
I'm very disciplined about and I'm very cautious about my backup and how I mount and unmount, and basically I never eject the card from my camera body.
Yeah,
I just keep it in there. And I've been very happy with the Sony Tough series cards.
Yeah,
that doesn't, I don't think, make much of a difference in terms of corruption, but the actual card physically not failing.
Totally,
it's like a piece of metal. It's so great.
Yeah,
I love these cards.
Yeah.
So anywho, but the R5 is coming down the pike.
Yeah,
and keep a watchful eye. It's going to be hopefully not too delayed and impacted by the whole supply chain disruption due to COVID, but I guess we'll see. We'll wait and see. I haven't heard many updates from Canon. Did you go to WPPI this year? I did, and I got to see the R5, but it wasn't in person. It was behind a glass case.
I saw that. I've never been. Maybe you can, because especially I feel like at least we're similar in the sense that like WPPI has never been attractive to me. Like and I think I'm an extrovert. I mean, like I miss weddings and I miss dance floors and fun and happiness, but something about, and maybe it's just our industry, right? Like, I don't know what it is after a few years where you're like, oh, I actually don't want to go to every photographer networking thing. But WPPI at the time, it just I didn't know what I was going for. At the time, there was no like education that I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I want to go for this. And then hearing your review, Nathan's, a few other friends, and they just said, Adam, you can't look at it like that. Go to see your homies and as a business expense, period. And I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I can get behind that, but at the time I didn't think about that.
I didn't do a single edifying thing while I was there. It was other than, just hanging out and like having discussions with people. I didn't do any of the like judging, any of like the formal. That's what's missing in this industry is like a conference that's just, you're going to come here and you're not going to learn anything. And like in the checkout, like where people buy their ticket, it's like, are you sure you want to come? You're going to learn nothing.
Yeah. Unless it's through conversation.
It's just a chance for us to get together in a spot that we all agree on.
Yeah.
And that's it. Build those personal relationships.
No.
That's why WPPI is, well, again, it was only my second time ever there. I went and spoke. That was my first time ever going in 2014 or 13. I spoke about prisming. And that was it. And most of my time at that point was spent in my hotel room, just by myself because I just didn't know anybody.
Yeah,
it's different now. There are people there, and there's so many different sides to this industry, and it kind of gives me exposure to that variance and reminds me of the different perspectives people have and how they run their business and the style, the visual style that is successful and compelling to other clients that, you know, would never be somebody I would work with. So it's good to have that versus a conference that's perfectly targeted and curated for me, Sam. And then you're just stuck in this bubble of sort of, you're not growing in that case. I mean, you might grow a little bit, but like, I think it's far more valuable to be kind of walking around the trade show floor and like not see a single photo that you admire.
Yeah.
That's kind of cool because you learn a lot
yeah.
about like where these other photographers are coming from. And like, anyway, hopefully I'm making sense there. I don't mean to belittle or say that there's not amazing work and amazing people that are at WPBI. It's just different. And it's stuff that I don't resonate with. So there's a lot to learn from that kind of environment.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
I'm always say, people learn different ways. And I think for me, I've as I've hit my 30s, I've decided that I'm like trying to, I learn different things in certain ways. So obviously like, there is some content that I want to learn from, hey, I just want to buy the actual videos and just watch, I would like to do this. And there's some content, I think I got to speak at my first like big conference this year, and it was very nerve wracking. But at the same time, it was.
Oh, that's the best feeling. Yeah. I've been backstage with people that are like, "Oh, this is my first time. I'm so nervous," and I doubt I effectively communicate what I try and pull out. Like that's actually for me personally. I love that feeling, those butterflies, the sort of like anxiety and panic, because it's so rare.
Yeah,
it's such, and it's something that you in the moment want to get through so quickly, but once it's done, no matter how it went, I've never seen anybody get like booed off stage.
Yeah.
Like people want you to do well.
Yeah.
And so no matter how it went from your own personal perspective, you feel like you grew and you feel, I think, enriched, even if you decide to never do it again. And that's totally understandable.
Yeah.
It's a healthy thing to go through that, experience. And I love it. I wish I tell people to try and slow down and like appreciate that feeling that you're having now, because it's just, that's such a rare thing in life. It truly is. And you don't know when it's going to happen again unless you become, heck, if you become an incredibly well-established, successful speaker, that feeling goes away on that side as well,
totally.
Because you get experience, and it's hard to recreate that energy. It's so fun. I love it.
Yeah, it was definitely equated to, like, I used to tour in a band, and I'd be like, okay, there are some shows where you'd be like, oh, this feels like a big one. Other shows where you're like, oh, okay, yeah, we've played here before. This feels okay, whatever. And it was so funny, but I think my perspective at the time was, this is totally off topic, but I still feel like I'm hopeful like you. I'm like, okay, I'm trying to build as much as I can to, anticipate the time when I will be out of this industry, whatever that means. But at the same time, for me, I feel lucky to be here. Like I'm not, I was raised by a single mom, born in a small town, and got kicked out of college. Like I don't feel like I'm supposed to be here. And it was so cool to kind of have the opportunity to speak. And I just told everybody when we first started the session, I just said, guys, I'm just like you. I'm not a celebrity. Like, so for some odd reason, I got asked to speak here. And I'm going to do the best I can to tell you what I know. And hopefully it'll help your business. But like, I hope that it comes off in a way that it's more true. You can trust it. Whereas like if you have somebody who you might feel like quote unquote is a celebrity, you might not trust it as much. But I'm like, guys, like I'm not supposed to be here, but I am. So let's do this.
Yeah.
But
absolutely.
But that was the conference, and the last thing before we let you go is and it's your fault, but Fur Waristi and Fernando and then Jason Vincent and I, all three of us, we were all speaking. We went to lunch. And Fur is like, so do you guys have Patreon? And Jason and I are like, no, we don't know if we're going to start one or whatever. And he's like, brothers, you have to start one.
That's great.
Dude, it's awesome. Yeah. So Jason Vincent started his. I think he's got like 25. And I've had one for a while, but it was, I didn't keep up with the content. And I think Jason and Fur, kind of helped me as well. Of like, Adam, like, this is what you should share. And to like the same reason I tell people, and like you said before, like people want to hear Sam's voice. People, despite what I think, want to hear my voice, evidenced by this podcast, which is very weird. And so I think that encouraged me just to be like, hey, don't think about other people. Just share what you're passionate about. And people that are passionate about you will follow, and
100%. The cool thing is, even if it doesn't work, if you've got a couple of posts, you gave it best effort for 6 months or whatever, and you've got some content, boom, that's like instant bloggable stuff that you can just put out for free because, hey, nobody wanted to support me financially. I'm just not getting that unique enough approach to teaching or that insight that's compelling, or maybe the market's becoming oversaturated. Fine. Like, okay, cool. Now I've got 6 months of like stuff I'll just put out for free on my blog.
Totally.
So there's always a payback, a benefit to putting in that effort of creating the content. It's not all lost. No matter how much money you make or don't make. It is tough to have, comparison will kill you. And it's so tough. Like there's another photographer, Taylor Jackson, who started a Patreon about a year and a half after me. He's been to my workshops. He had 2 weddings. I photographed his small wedding in Canada before his bigger wedding in Mexico. And great guy. But he launched his Patreon and he got like 600, 700 people. It's like, awesome, cool. And then he like doubled or tripled in the span of like 3 months. And I was like, holy crap, he's got it figured out. Like, what is he doing? I'm so jealous. Like, oh my God, he's cracked the code. What is happening? And I still don't know. And maybe it's just YouTube because he's more of a YouTuber.
Sure.
He's big on that audience. I purposely don't pay a lot of attention to other people that are actively pushing Patreon stuff because I don't want to, even if it's subconscious, scrape too similar a tone or be inspired and I've never wanted to be like that. As much as I love drawing from influences in my visual approach, photography wise, I don't want to do that for something that's directly originating from my brain. Anyway, it's tough, but at the end of the day, if you're putting in the hard work, that content will have value other places, even if the Patreon business model doesn't work. That's how it goes.
How are you on time? Do you have time for one more question?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, all good.
So the one question I want to know, I think for you and as somebody who is in doing photography workshops, education, etc., for a while, even just we'll talk about Instagram. Your audience might be a larger, different diagram, different, grouping of clients versus photographers, right? Like I feel like your audience is like largely, I don't know, we would assume that it's a lot of photographers, right? Whereas like most photographers,
a lot of photographers from India.
Yeah, exactly. They
many.
love your stuff, man. And I think too, I find that whenever I like do try to experiment with Facebook ads and I type in photography, like just like I'm like, oh, okay, these are the countries where it's resonating. But for most photographers who are starting Patreon, or even like myself, I realize like, oh, at the beginning, I have to kind of think about like how will I cater my educational content on Instagram, or maybe that's one of my fears. So maybe asking your advice when I think most of my audience is potential clients, or current clients.
I've always had the perspective that any potential new clients or current clients, it like validates their decision in hiring you to see, you have somewhat of a voice of authority, even if it's just a pretend voice. not you, but even if like, say you're somebody who's like, I've never written a review, I just want to write one, and you do it. I think people love that geekiness. They want a photographer. I would want that in my photographer. So I don't see that as a bad thing. I don't see it at all as a problem. I also am not entirely convinced that, as long as your feed doesn't turn into just a complete, grid of videos and self-promotional stuff and just like selling. And you still are grounded in the majority of it being wedding clients and their photos you're sharing just because that is the core of your business. I think it's okay to pepper in as much as you possibly can get away with educational stuff, because again, potential clients see that I think as a validating aspect of their decision. Like, oh, our photographer is teaching workshops all over the world, or has, this many views on his video about something we don't even understand, but like, this is great. Like, clearly we're hiring a professional versus somebody who needs to ask advice about what lens to use during toasts or something. Right.
Like,
no,
totally. Yeah. You're setting, you're setting the tone as the educator. Yeah. That makes sense. I love that. I appreciate that.
I've always seen it as a selling point. And honestly, I'm not fully convinced about how much value social media, at least from my business. I have not seen like a huge swing in like all my business is coming from Instagram now, or all my business is coming. It's still word of mouth, and just generally somebody found my website through something on Google or some something. It's all website based as the origination for, again, maybe part of that did actually originate from Facebook or Instagram, but I don't think that that's a huge meaningful number. And I've never leaned into it. I've never said like, share my Instagram profile with your friends and family if you're a wedding client, because I'll give them I've never pushed that part of the magnet, or the sales funnel or whatever.
That makes sense. That makes sense. What one last fun question: what non-camera tech are you loving right now?
Oh man, non-camera.
Yeah, like any gadgets or any. When I think of you, I think of your like app-controlled espresso machine.
Dude, I have something come like every day. This is actually not tech. I just got this. It's a stovetop espresso maker, which is fantastic. I've never made espresso on the stovetop before. It's all practical. There's no electronics in it. This is really cool.
Yeah.
So looking at, if you like espresso, you can easily make it in 5 minutes on your stovetop, which is really fun.
Yeah. Is it good?
Gadget-wise, it's very good. Yes. Excellent. Although I would say I still sort of prefer my Nespresso.
Okay.
Nespresso's just got it figured out. I have this. I just got this yesterday. It's a new sort of, it's 3-in-1 fast wireless charging mount.
Okay.
That does, it just sits on your desk or your bedside stand. It does wireless charging for your phone.
Yep.
Has a little wireless charger here to set your watch up nicely. And this is all like an upright presentation, so you can see it if you need.
Yeah.
And then this little tab here also charges over USB Mini or Lightning. So you can, in one little stand, have your AirPods, your phone, and your watch.
Oh, I love it.
All charging, at the same time. And then it's got this green light around the circumference that lets you know if they're all charged. And it turns, it pulses blue if it's actively doing it. It's awesome. It was like $20. I loved the Sidecar app on the Apple iPad OS.
Yeah.
Sidecar and using my iPad as an extended display next to my iMac Pro has been a complete... I cannot work without it now. I absolutely love it. And I can just quickly send apps into, multiple desktops. I think I have 6 desktops, and on my iPad, I have, my email, my messaging, Safari on one, and I don't know, Apple Music, and it's all like this nice place. And then that way, whatever I have as my main sort of web browsing or Lightroom or whatever, I can use on my iMac screen. And still, anyway, I love using Sidecar.
Yeah, Sidecar is great. And I think too, people buy the iPad. I know in the tech circles, they talk about like, oh, I love the one app focus. Well, now you can use like Mac OS, still have the one app focus kind of in that space, because if you're using the spaces in different desktops. So that's awesome.
And you can use the Apple Pencil through the iPad to control your Mac OS apps. I using the pencil. I really wish they would open up the option to use your finger.
Yeah.
Mac apps aren't optimized for the precision of your giant meat fingers, right? Like the apps, like it's not a great experience, but for some apps it's fine.
Yeah.
And it would be cool. Again, that's why right now they have it locked down, so you have to use the pencil, because you do have that pinpoint precision on the iPad Mac OS apps using the pencil. That's great, but it's annoying to have to pick it up and use it. I really wish that they would open up touch, and people could, if they want, start to iterate their Mac apps to support finger touch. And anyway,
I love it,
dude. So much stuff. I've got so many gadgets all the time. It's a real problem. And honestly, I need to start getting rid of some of this. That's honestly why I do a lot of giveaways, just because I don't want to bother with selling crap. I just want to get it out of my house and give it to somebody who's going to use it and need it more than me. Yeah.
Totally. No, I 100% agree.
How about you? Any cool news? I know we were talking about microphones and preamps and all that kind of stuff, but it looks like you got a pretty good rig figured out.
Yeah, I mean, the podcast rig has been pretty similar for a while. It's been great. I love for a guy's voice, like we both use SM7Bs, and I love that. And I bought my Apollo Twin about a year and a half ago. MKBHD did his studio tour, and I was like, oh, okay, yeah, that's what I want to do, because I was using like a little USB interface, and it was fine. But as we both know, like the SM7B is very hungry. And this is very nerdy for anybody not listening or not understanding audio. But the Apollo has been wonderful. I think my Sidecar definitely on the iPad. I mean, I think the 2018 and 2020 iPads have been wonderful. I mean, my current tech love right now, this is not affordable, but I bought the 2019 Mac Pro, and it's my favorite thing ever in life.
Oh, dang. Nice.
Dude, we had a photographer friend of mine still works for Apple. And so he was like, hey, I ordered it and posted online, just kind of being funny. And he was like, hey, I could have gotten you a discount. And I was like, oh, would you still like to give me that discount? He was like, sure. Like, and I trust him enough. And yeah, he helped order it for me. And, we got a little bit of a kickback. And
did you also get the diamond etched matte screen?
Yeah, I did not. That is where it's almost funny how like value, determines. Like for me, I have a. That's the one reason I like the Mac Pros, because I just was never a fan of the IMAX display for photography for some reason, and I like it. Like the iMac Pro is incredible, but for some reason I just wanted more control, right? Like I wanted to minimize, separate the computer from the screen, and without having two big monitors. And I use an LG. I forget what it's about $1,000 or so, and it's wonderful. That it is great. It's calibrated, so it is like people always talk about like, oh, how do I calibrate my screen? But once you do, I'm like, guys, your screen's gonna last for 10 years because it's at 40% brightness. They always tout this like huge brightness, and I'm like, guys, for print, we don't really need it to be that bright, but. Yeah,
I've held off on the Mac Pro because I just got the iMac Pro after 3-4 years of having the 5K iMac. I got the iMac Pro, I think, in November, and I love this machine. I freaking love it, and I can't bring myself to the simplicity on my desk, and I have it rigged up to an articulating arm with a VESA mount instead of the VESA mount instead of the standard it came with. So it's just literally right now looking at it's floating in front of me. Yeah, and I love that the whole computer's right there. I can't get off that that like awesome, just minimalist. But I do envy the workhorse and power. I mean, the iMac Pro is no slouch, but the Mac Pro is going to last you long time.
Dude, well, you'll like this. So maybe we're getting really deep and dirty, but this is so bought the Mac Pro, and then OWC or Mac Sales came out with this 8 terabyte SSD, and it's 4 NVMe 2 drives in RAID 0. Sam, it's almost a gigabyte or like 5 gigabytes per second. It's insane. Like
But how much? How much is it?
It was $2,000.
Oh, that's not as bad as I thought it would be.
Yeah,
that's cool.
I didn't think so. I put the RAWs on there for Lightroom exports and imports, and it's sped up things a lot. It's been really, really fun.
Did you pick up the Flujo?
I did not. I see. I know you love that thing. It's awesome.
Yeah, I love it. So this is my only NVMe
product
2 terabytes, just a little chip right there. And this is my go-to external hard drive. I still use the NAR box for backing up on the fly, but for accessing stuff as an external hard drive where I need to access video files, whatever I'm plugging into my computer. I actually never plug my NAR box into my computer. I just use it as a dummy backup device, and then re-import everything from my camera directly when I get home. Or if I'm on the road, I'll import it to my laptop. But this Flujo drive, there's nothing else like it on the market. This was a Kickstarter campaign. They still don't seem to have figured out like distribution. They just ran another Kickstarter campaign to sell more because they're a small shop. They aren't. They have no funding. They did well on Kickstarter, but anyway.
For people who don't know, it's an external hard drive SSD, super fast, but also kind of a USB hub all together in one kind of the same size as a drive. So it's really small. HDMI. It's super useful. I think if I didn't have, I mean, this is a good example of what we talked about before. If I didn't have something that already fit that in my workflow, and it wasn't coronavirus because I'm trying to lighten up on spending,
save money.
I would have bought that because it's great. I do love they just keep coming down in price. The Samsung T5 drives, like they're so tiny and small.
I've got so many of them just laying around.
Right?
I got the Ferrari of Samsung drives for my video stuff. It's the 2 terabyte.
The SanDisk guy, or is it Samsung?
Oh, I can't remember.
People have stopped.
It's Samsung. People have stopped listening. It's the SSD X5.
Oh yeah. I've seen that, and it's just faster read and write.
Absolutely insanely fast. Yeah.
Awesome, man. Well, dude, this has been wonderful. I'll let you go. We just need to do a video.
We need to just start a podcast, our own tech podcast, because we listen to the same ones. And I don't know about you, but I think they've jumped the shark. Many of them. ATP still, I think some of them. I don't know if you listen to Daring Fireball or any of those other. Yeah, they tend to get. I think Apple just isn't doing enough to to keep people excited and like warrant a lot of these podcasts. So we need to
when the most exciting thing
get on it.
The most exciting thing this week from Apple is a $400 iPhone and an iPad stand. We have a problem. Yeah.
Yes.
Dude, I would love that. Or we just need to do like a little video night one time in your Patreon or on, YouTube or something, and we'll just go through tech, and all, 6 nerds will come out, and we'll have fun. But dude, thank you so much, man, for being on a second time. It was wonderful. We're gonna get you we're gonna drop your Instagram for everybody. It's just I am the Sam. Go follow, and then of course, go check out your Patreon. I love it. Thank you so much, dude. It was awesome.
Cool. Yeah, thank you, Adam. Take care.
You gotta love when Sam Hurd's on. We could talk for hours, I believe. And also, if you want us to start a tech show, always just send us a little note, because we would love to talk tech anytime. But hopefully that encourages you if you've been thinking about the Patreon space, or just not really sure what that looks like for you. If you're trying to dive into education, or if you just want to add, obviously I'm going to shout out mine and Sam's patrons, or Nessa Kessinger as well, Benj Heisch, all great patrons that I think are really fun and really affordable to join in on the kind of education game and see what's out there. I think it's really, really cool and just valuable, especially during this time when like conferences and workshops aren't really a thing. So thank you so much to Sam for coming on. Really great. We'll see you guys next Tuesday, 7 p.m. with Maddie May in the Facebook group, and have a wonderful day, guys. Keep being awesome.